Good. Yeah. I've got one of those ring lights, at home. I should probably bring that and just set it up for,
It's my ring. That's right.
It's round.
It's right.
It's close enough.
Everything's central.
Oh,
I think we're about ready to go.
oh.
I want to welcome everybody to summer at Char's Landing. Yay, welcome. Yay. We have a nice crowd here. I've adjusted the cameras. Hopefully everyone can see everyone. Yeah. And
you don't need to cry there, Peter. It's okay.
Oh. So I'm going to hand it over to Karl, and I invite you to all have a wonderful evening.
Electric Mermaid Emcee Derek Hanebury is a Port Alberni writer of poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction who taught writing here at North Island College for many years. His latest book, Both Sides Now, is a collaboration of short fiction with two of his past students. His solo collection is now out, entitled Something Else Altogether.
Thank you, Karl. And I keep thinking I gotta update that. And I never remember before the next Electric Mermaid. But anyway, we're here and we're glad to be here. Welcome everybody here at Char's Landing and out there in Zoom land. Another whirlwind session of the Electric Mermaid coming at you from beautiful downtown Port Alberni on the unceded territory of the Hepetcheseth and Sishat First Nation. And Char assures me that my lighting is superb here, and I'm just going to bathe in it, but I got to say I have a hard time seeing everybody out there, so I'm glad you put the lights up in the house. Thank you. All right. So, yeah, we've got another full slate of readers tonight, including, of course, Bill Engleson, our featured reader coming to us from Demman Island. We're looking forward to that and the life of Gronsky. We also have a 10-minute spotlight with our Port Alberni's Laurie Blakely. If she makes it, I don't see her out in the audience yet, but I'm going to guess that she'll show up at some point here, hopefully in time. And of course, a lot of our other regular readers are waiting in the wings to do their open mic sessions. So as always, I'm excited to hear what's coming down the pipe tonight. Yes. So big shout out to Char for hosting us here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And to Karl for keeping us on track as our moderator. Right. And of course, to all you out there in Zoom land who are joining us and here in house, you're the people who this wouldn't happen without either. So big shout out for yourselves. Thank you. All right, we're going to get started right away and go to the Gulf Islands where Peter Paul Van Camp is taking a last sip of water to wet his whistle before he shares some of his verse with us. Are we going to get some more 70s cycling poems?
You bet you are.
All right.
But before I get to the poems, and I'm going to read 3 of them, I want everyone to know that this, I did a count, and this is my 350th time appearing at an open mic of any description.
Wow.
So, how I started, and that's how I'm continuing over this 50-year period. Also, I'm afraid I'm going, after Bill reads, I'm going to have to cut away because I'm invited out to dinner, and Mrs. Van Camp is away for a few weeks, and I've been invited out to a neighbor so that I don't perish of my own cookery too soon. But let's begin. This is the ongoing series that I've been talking about, and they're all entitled Peter Paul Van Camp on a Bicycle at 70. I've already read for you numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, and 14, and tonight I shall try to favor you with numbers 21, 22, and 19. So, without further preamble, here is Peter Paul Van Camp on a Bicycle at 70. Number 21, and this deals with the longevity of my family. My father, who is poised to become a 98-year-old, has not ridden a bicycle in some time. He seldom speaks of it, but when he was a boy, 90 years ago, he would refuse to stand when cycling up the hill at the top of his street. He was determined he could climb it sitting every single time. He was a little boy with places to go, and it really wasn't that much of a hill, but still. This may go some way toward explaining how it is that he is now poised to become a 98-year-old. His son is the same way about some things, but not this. Myself, I insist on walking my bike up all hills. Why? Well, just stubborn, I suppose. Anyhow, the point here is, there's just no quit in us Van Camps. If we set out to get somewhere, by George, we get there. How we get there is our own affair, and we seldom speak of it. This being the exception to that rule. Now here's Peter Paul Van Camp on a bicycle at 70, number 22. Just written today, by the by. My grandmother, who attended her 104th birthday party and knew perfectly well what all the fuss was about, used to entertain us with this adage: every stitch you sew on a Sunday, you will have to pull out with your nose before you get to glory. Now, as a mere septuagenarian, in a lineage that shows promise of nearly biblical longevity, one has to ponder the sort of penance to be exacted of one such as I, who has already put in untold hours in bicycle maintenance on the Sabbath day, and is no closer now to getting his wheels trued than he was a month of Sundays ago when that spoke wrench appeared beneath the Christmas tree. Well, the road to perdition may well be paved with good intentions, but the wobbly one I'm riding to purgatory is cobbled with plain old incompetence. And I shall leave you with number 19. This is one that occurred to me while I was riding just a couple of weeks ago. Peter Paul Van Camp on a bicycle at 70, number 19. Now, I don't know about you folks, but sometimes in a certain gear, it feels as if I'm pedaling in iambic heptameter. To verify this, I repeat these well-loved lines by Edgar A. Guest. There never was a family without its homely man, with legs a little longer than the ordinary plan, the one with freckled features and a nose that looks as though it was fashioned by the youngsters from a chunk of mother's dough. You know the man I'm thinking of, the homely one and plain. Yep. Well, I won't be back until I've written 35 of these things, until I'm halfway, all right? How's that? That's my promise, and I'm going to sit back and be quiet now and enjoy what I can until I have to tear away. Thank you very much for hearing me out.
That's great, Peter. Thank you. Thank you. And just thinking back on your poem from the other Electric Mermaid there, we'll find out from Bill who you had dinner with next time we talk.
Oh, you sure? Oh, all right, sure.
Okay. All right. We're going to switch gears and come into Char's Landing in live and in person, except I don't see Dean Lamount either. Hang on here. Oh, no, we've been stood up. But it's okay. We're going to jump one past you, Bill, and then we'll come back to you. Victoria Roscoe-Roumanis is definitely here. What's that? Skip another. Okay. All right. We're going back out into Zoom land. We're flexible here at Electric Mermaid. We just go with the flow, right? So we're going back out to David Kippling over there in Gibson's Landing. who thought he had all that time to catch his breath and all of a sudden now has to find his glasses, get everything
Yeah.
in 2 minutes.
You know, when I used to ride a bicycle, in fact, the first one, my parents didn't want me to have a bicycle, so I went with a friend to the garbage dump and found pieces and built one, but the brakes never worked. But I was just thinking, Peter Paul Van Camp at 70. Now, I once went 45 on a bike and it was way too fast. So I think of Peter Paul Van Camp at 70, that really is quite some speed.
Yeah.
Years of age, sir.
Hey, oh, I had no idea. Okay, this is about Mickey and Shirley, and I've done with Mickey and Shirley once or twice at Technical College, and here we go. Mickey Ferris flinched as the column of Girl Guides marched past. Yes, loud, isn't it? Asked a voice behind him. Shirley, from his automotive class, and from that end-of-term kiss at the Huntsman. Nearly bust my eardrums, laughed Mickey. That's my mum with the bugle. She's the guide leader, said Shirley, pointing. Look, watch there, how they all turn left at the same time. They're following Mum's bugle calls. Mum's got a whole book of them, the bugle calls. In the old days, armies gave commands with a bugle, no radios. Mickey told Shirley that they got an old army bugle at his home, that my dad hung on to after he's finished his national service. Mickey had imagined restoring the instrument. His dad was long gone, but the old bugle stayed behind among the junk at the forgotten end of the garage. Mickey persuaded Shirley to come with him to Zimmerman's the following Saturday and have it looked at. He told her the mouthpiece was silver, probably worth a bit. Plated, you mean, said Shirley, not solid. Mickey said nothing and pushed the shop door open a bit harder than it needed. Zimmerman Instrument and Watch Repairs, said the gold leaf on the door. Saul Zimmerman turned the bugle over and over in his bony hands, weighed it and squinted fiercely at Mickey. The two were surprised to find themselves standing to attention under his piercing eyes. Can you fix those dents? Asked Mickey, pointing. And that part that's bent, and it's a bit scratched. It's been like that ever since I can remember it. The old man looked hard at Mickey. You say this was your father's from his army days? Mickey nodded. Yes, he was a bugler in the infantry. Oh, it wasn't wartime, just national service. Mickey was aware at his back of the Gothic lettering of Zimmerman's sign. Young man, are you going to play this instrument? Do you intend to take lessons, perform? Mickey shrugged. No, I just thought it'd be nice to have it like new again. Silence. Zimmerman lay down his magnifier, switched off his workbench light, and leaned forward. Young man, young lady, I left Germany in 1938. Home, possessions, gone. Listen to an old man one time, okay? At my home in Leipzig, we had an old shoehorn. Schuhlöffel. You know German? It's a spoon for shoes. How you like that? People then used shoehorns, you know, ladies, gentlemen, all kinds. So maybe the shoe leather those days were not so wonderful, eh? Not everything was better in the old days, believe me. Mickey shuffled his feet impatiently, but Mickey gripped his arm from behind. Go on, Mr. Zimmerman, she said. I loved that shoehorn, long handle, and the spoon part was real horn, buffalo horn, smooth, mottled grey. Handle ebony it was, heavy hardwood. You know ebony? That handle was damaged, and the spoon part had been re-glued and pinned. Long ago somebody must have fixed it up. Not so pretty. He waved a hand impatiently at himself, then continued. That old shoehorn they kept on a hook by the back door. I used to play with it when I was a little boy. I used to balance it across my knuckles, stroke my cheek with it, feel the glue on the split, whatever kids do. Childhood, okay? All gone. No more shoehorn. Listen, okay? Mr. Zimmerman scowled over his half-moon spectacles. What you standing like a couple statues? Here, those two stools. Take, sit. Let me tell you something. If the richest man in the world come in here today, say, Herr Zimmerman, I have paid all kinds of money to find and fix your daddy's shoehorn. Look, see how it shines now, perfect, no mark, no stain, no crack, all perfect like new. You know what, man, young man, what I would do? I throw that thing at his head. I spit at him, you forgive. I say, geh weg, get away. I don't want your face here even, or that shoehorn. You say my father's shoehorn. It is not my father's shoehorn that I know. That shoehorn I play with when I was a little boy back those days. Mickey and Shirley had frozen as the old man finished and wiped his mouth. Young man, this is your daddy bugle. He carried this when he was a young man. Now you have it in your home. Here, take hold, and don't do one damn thing. You excuse language, not one thing to it. You are a lucky young chap, you have something from your daddy to keep as it was, the way you know it. Keep, don't change. Mickey, still uncertain, gestured to the bugle. What about this mouthpiece, though? This is silver, isn't it? He felt Shirley freeze behind him. Mr. Zimmerman touched the mouthpiece and smiled. You think even your British Army can afford solid silver? Shirley added helpfully, it's just silver plating, isn't it, Mr. Zimmerman, on brass like all wind instruments. Mickey's face looked like he was blowing a tuba. No, my dear, bronze, phosphor bronze, gives a sharper tone. Silver plating, yes, because silver kills germs, but this is phosphor bronze. Brass has too much lead in it. Mickey turned to pat Shirley's arm. Mickey asked about the crude cord hanging from the bugle. Mr. Zimmerman flicked at the improvised lanyard. Tell me, was your father some prince, some rich man in palace with silk and pearls, or was he what you said, a regular bloke? Mickey smiled. Yes, that, a regular bloke, I suppose. Good. Mr. Zimmerman, too, began to relax and smile. So this bloke, one day he lose the proper lanyard, okay? So maybe he finds some tent rope, sash cord, what do you know? So he fix it. What the hell? His bugle, right? Can do what he wants with his bugle, I think. You put this bugle as it is, any wall your house, be proud of it, proud this bugle. He looked quickly down at his tools and papers, straightened them, and flapped a hand as if to dismiss the two. Shirley spoke again. Mr. Zimmerman, thank you, and she pinched Mickey so that he agreed. Okay, young people, get off you go, lots to do, right? Only no touch, no messing with your daddy bugle. Bye-bye now. But the following autumn, and it was an awful wet autumn, Shirley's grandmother fell and died while she was digging in some manure that she'd got from the Mabbott's farm, their field just in the back, and which she'd insisted on hauling round in a wheelbarrow, just like Grandad used to. She kneeled carefully on the freshly dug soil and just went away. And the day before the funeral, Shirley and her parents tiptoed shyly into the undertaker's back room. Granny had written down her instructions way back, as soon as Grandad had died. The best undertakers in the county, fanciest, most expensive, as all the neighbours knew well. And mind you, elm for her coffin, just like Grandad's. No cheap pine coffins for her family. So the three tiptoed into the opulent chapel of rest to make their farewells over the open coffin. Shirley gave her grandma some hawthorn blossoms from just by the back gate, and she looked hard at the serene, almost rosy face offering itself for display in the coffin, and the smooth hands softly folded. Then the three of them shuffled in embarrassed silence back out to the street, not looking at each other. Shirley, in a deflated mood, brought Mickey Ferris to mind, of all people. She hadn't seen him since college, and the kiss, really, and the bugle. She thought she might give him a call. The end.
Beautiful. Thank you. Subtle implications. I love that. I love your writing, David. That was wonderful. All right. We're going to head to Denman Island again now, and we're going to have our featured reader, Bill Engelson's going to share some of his novel with us. And I'll just give you a little bit of background for those of you who might not know enough about Bill yet. Bill is, well, he's a retired social worker, but much more importantly, he's a prolific writer, and he writes everything from essays to reviews to novels. And he's shared some of that with us here on Char's Landing and always left us hungry for more. So we're really glad to have him here to do a longer reading. And we're going to leave a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A. So if you can keep that in mind, if you've got anything you'd like to ask Bill about. You told me, Bill, you're going to share a couple of sections that reflect on how you wrote this in a very short period of time. So I'm going to let you explain that and set it up a little bit more, but we're just really, really happy to have you here as a feature, Bill. The floor is all yours.
Okay, and I hope I'm coming in clearly.
Beautifully.
Okay. Well, I'll just quickly explain that the life of Gronski was written over a period of 33 days. The first movement of Gronski, about the first 80, 90 pages of the book, was written on the Labor Day weekend, 2021, as part of the 3-day novel contest. And the bulk of the book was written in November as part of NaNoWriMo, which is where writers around the world, having not much else to do, devote the entire month to writing 50,000 words or more, if they can. So, so the story, I will begin with a bit right at the beginning, and you will meet Gronski. Gronski is writing a little story to begin with, a mystery, a detective mystery, and I'll give you a tidbit of that. Then we'll move to November, and I will give you a bit of the much more complex mystery that Gronski wrote, and then a small summary, and that'll be it, I think. Hopefully around 20 minutes or less. We'll see. Here we go. Labor Day weekend, New Westminster, 2021. Friday morning, September 3rd. There it was, the first lie, the first fiction. It wasn't morning, it was evening, Friday evening. Gronski had thought he might stay up past midnight and at least knock out a few words, get started, set the stage, do something. But it was around 10:30 and he was starting to fade. The wine, he supposed. Yeah, the wine. And there was nothing better than a good night's sleep. Everyone knew that. When it had been Friday morning, he had sat on his porch. It was a little past 7. He was sipping his coffee, hot, tongue burning hot, even with the 2%. Traffic was moving. The sounds of the day beginning were humming in the air. It was a little wet. Rain had finally arrived. He was pleased about that. Wet earth. We all needed damp soil. Grass was going to grow a bit now. There hadn't been much lawn to cut this past summer. Droughts were useful for some things. Gronski called it a porch, this thing that he was sitting on, but what his mother had insisted was a porch was what he preferred to call a veranda. She would have none of it. Airs, Gilbert. No one appreciates a little boy putting on airs. So porch it was. Veranda had been one of his first big words. He loved the way it had rolled off Miss Hastings' tongue. Veranda. Magic. He had been in grade 3. She was young, Miranda Hastings was, as young as an adult could be. She had laughed when she rhymed Miranda with veranda. Try it yourself, she said. Not veranda, but Gilbert. But it was disappointing. Gilbert offered few rhyming options then, or now. None really, other than Filbert. And Gronski was hopeless. There were no fun rhymes to be had there. But Gronski hadn't cared about rhymes all that much. He had such a crush on Miranda Hastings that first day, and it grew during the weeks, the months that followed, the way her red lips formed words, smiled like he and she had a secret no one else knew. But she was gone in a year. These young teachers, his mother had clacked her tongue. All they want is a man, security, they'll find out. She'd be over 80 now, Gronski thought. Miss Hastings, Miranda Veranda, whatever the name of the man she married, he never knew. Or if he did, it had faded. He remembered how crushed he was, though, what his crush on her had come to. Still, he wished her well. He would always have Veranda. He sat there Friday morning wondering if he could pull off a novel in 3 days, something he had never even come close to before. He'd only had a few hours to sign up. And it was no spring chicken, no cliched early fowl, but it was a challenge that he thought he needed to take. And there was nothing like the present. Time was moving along. The last few years, he had started to write things, trivial things, notes about his life. Then one day, he discovered flash fiction. It was like a new world had opened, stories told in miniature. At first, he grabbed little incidents from his days, thoughts, puny tales, and shaped them, went online and posted them. There were a ton of sites that encouraged writers. They'd come and go, and he would play as often as he wished. He knew he was self-taught. But that didn't mean he hadn't learned from other writers. He wasn't even sure that he thought of himself as a writer. What he did was similar to doing crosswords. His mother had enjoyed doing crossword puzzles, and in truth, it was like writing, filling in the blanks, one-word stories at a time. 3 days preyed on his mind. 3 whole days. A mental list of pros and cons flashed before his eyes. On the pro side, he didn't have a lot to do. No obligations, no social engagements. COVID had been useful that way. You could be a hermit and still be a responsible and engaged citizen. Gronsky believed that he had just the right number of social contacts. He was in control of his life. Granted, it was mostly an inner social life, but it worked for him. The con side was a tad more daunting. He had habits. One was watching the U.S. Open, any tennis contest, really. The past few years had seen a wonderful array of Canadian professional tennis players, and Gronsky felt a patriotic obligation to catch as many of their matches as he could. Why, he wondered, did the 3-day novel writing contest have to fall smack dab in the middle of a 2-week feast of tennis? It wasn't logical. Forget logic, it just wasn't right. But there it was. Could he do both? Watch tennis for hours at a time and write a novel? Gronsky fist pumped and yelled, yeah! He then signed up. He was in, $50, $16.66 a day, cheap at half the price. Morning, September 4th. Gronsky had gotten a good 7 hours sleep, only a little tossing and turning. A few sirens had wailed in the night. He supposed they had upset the tranquility of his slumber, but the bodies of city dwellers adjusted to those ever-present sounds. He certainly had, and sirens in the night, especially in the night, as distressing as they were also somehow comforting sounds. It meant attending incidents that needed attending, saving lives, hopefully saving lives. Lives were always at risk. Age was a risk. Every minute of life was a risk. Maybe that was why he was going to write this time-compressed novel. He was running out of time. He got up at 7, made coffee, grabbed some yogurt and fruit, went to his den, sat down on his word processor, TV at his back, ready for tennis at 8, and then started pounding out words. In a number of his tiny flash fiction pieces, he had given birth, that's what it was, to Jimmy the Slider Watkins, Private Eye. Watkins would carry the load of this novel. What to call it? He didn't have a title. The big sleep was taken. The little snooze seemed stupid. Gronsky always wrote titles. He needed a title. The Last Breath. Yeah, he thought, that would do. Chapter 1, The Last Breath. The first thing I noticed about her was her ankle. Believe me, it had been years since a well-turned ankle had grabbed me by the eyeballs. Mr. Watkins, she asked, right leg stepping in from the hallway. I noticed the ankle and the leg, and then she was fully in the office, and I was willing to admit the obvious. James Watkins, private inquiries at your service. I told her to take a seat. She followed instructions. I appreciated that. So rare these days. And what might your name be? I asked, rather sloppily. Do I have to tell you? I understood that some folks require a level of comfort before they expose themselves. No, that'll keep for a while. How can I help you? It would turn out to be one of the oldest stories in the book. End of that section. Moving on. Seven weeks later, November 1st, Chapter 1, Scratch an Old Wound. This is set, by the way, in 1946 to begin with. Danny Hawkins knew that he had to get as far away as possible from the ravages he had seen in Europe. The horror that was Belsen wouldn't leave him alone. The human mind, to say nothing of the heart, has a maximum number of corpses it can cope with at any one time. He didn't know what the precise number was, or even if there was really a number, except, yes, he believed that there always was a number, and it always came up. He had been demobilized in Nova Scotia at Camp Aldershot near Halifax, where he had completed his basic training before being shipped overseas. The Maritimes were moderately interesting, but after a few days, Montreal was sharply in his sights, and he arrived there in February 1946. It was a new city to him, never ever been east of Winnipeg before, except for the train trip from Edmonton to Aldershot after he had signed up. He loved the size of Montreal. It was the antithesis of concentration camps and of war, and the farm where he grew up, or so he hoped. So he decided to stay a while, soak it all in, get the flavor. The flavor's name turned out to be Monique Lavoie. She was a little older than Danny, and that was fine with him. Monique was settled in, sure of herself, strong and soft. Together, she managed a small restaurant, Emcee, which had okay food, but was better known by some on the darker side of the street as a front for one of Harry's ship's smaller casinos. Yeah, just lost my page. Danny knew about its rougher edges from the get-go. While he had no significant yearnings to gamble, he had no qualms about suckers losing their milk money. That's what the fucking war is about, he told Monique one night when he was heavily into gin and tonic, and she was in a mood to tolerate it. The right to be a damn fool anytime you want. Monique held her tongue, though that was not her usual practice, and certainly not because she agreed with Danny. Wisely, she saw no percentage in arguing with his inebriated self. However, he demanded some response, and so her discretion went out the window of their second-floor rooms. Well, don't they? He had become unpleasantly insistent, fueled by alcohol and whatever else made good men mad. Of course, Danny. It's the right of any fool to be parted from their money, even, she hesitated, even if their children go without food. I agree with you. He caught the sarcasm in her comment and let loose. Jesus, Mary, Monique, you think I'm that fucked up? I don't want kids to be starving. Fuck, it doesn't matter. What I want is what people do, what's in their nature. Monique went over to Danny, who was standing at the window looking down on the street below. She took the bottle from his hand, put it down on the windowsill, and rested her head on his shoulder. It's late. Let's go to bed. I need you. Defeated in so many ways, he nodded yes, and she assisted him to their bed. She helped him with his clothes, and once they were lying down together, she cradled him as he struggled to get to sleep. In the night, she felt him get out of bed twice. The second time, she thought she could hear crying. Sometimes she regretted begging Harry to hire Danny. He wasn't cut out to be a bookie. Danny decided to call him his muscle bookie. Danny had regular shifts at one of Harry's strings of White Houses. He seemed to enjoy the work. Occasionally, he had to do collections. Some people just never seemed to want to pay up. Danny had a quiet anger, a bit of simmering fury, contained just enough to be effective. Harry had even told her that Danny might rise in the business. I like his style, Monique. Like it a lot. You did good bringing him to me. Monique wondered if she was feeling that she did good. She understood that while Harry was riding high now, there were others, police officers, prosecutors, competitors, who wanted to bring him down. Harry and anyone in his wake. Tonight, Game 5 of the Stanley Cup would make Harry's enterprises exceptionally busy, and that would include the casino behind Emcee. They slept late and arose around 10. It was Tuesday, April 9th. She put on a pot of coffee and sliced up an aging cantaloupe. Tonight's the night, she asked. Yeah, he answered. Game 5. You don't mind me not going? It was kind of up to Harry, wasn't it? He wants you there. It'll be a busy night. I'm surprised he let me have the night off. We say imprisonable? What is it in English? Unpredictable. Yes, unpredictable. Maybe I think otherwise. Harry always knows what he's doing. He needs you more than he needs me. We're alike that way. That made her smile. You understand? Of course. Good. Later in the morning, they went out for a light lunch. They lingered over coffee and croissants at a little cafe that Monique called Notre Dame, even though its actual moniker was Chez Paul. They then came home and spent the afternoon in bed. Monique had to be at work by 6, and so later, refreshed, they traveled together. She to work, and he to the game. The 5th game of the 1946 Stanley Cup was a goal scorer's bonanza. Montreal won 6-3 and took the cup. The first 2 games had been played in Montreal, but Harry hadn't wanted to cut him loose. It's our bread and butter, you crosseur. All that matters is that les pedants do what they do best, lose their souls. Danny couldn't resist sticking it to his boss. He'd come to learn that Harry enjoyed to an extent the occasional snappy comeback, a bit of a lively challenge from underlings. Not a whole lot, but some. All it means to you is money, eh? Pardon my French, Harry, but Christ, you're a bloody bullshitter. As soon as he said it, truth though it was, he immediately regretted the risk. Danny had been a smart soldier and knew to keep a healthy social distance from his superiors. In the world Harry lived in, respect was everything, even with the sense that he could play with him. He had no doubt that Harry was a viper, and you just never knew about vipers. Danny boy, maybe I am, and maybe it's okay for you to call me out, but tread carefully, boyo. I like to play, but I don't like to be hurt. Anyways, go to the 5th game on me. And so he did. And now the Canadians were on top of the heap, at least for 1946. And I'll read one more section. Morning, November 1st. There was no doubt about it, Gil Gronsky was confused, and he had no one to blame but himself. He hadn't intended to start a new novel, but then a few weeks ago he learned about the whole National Novel Writing Month scenario, which people succinctly, if awkwardly, called NaNoWriMo. Instead of 3 days, he'd have a month, a whole month. No more than a week ago, he had a brainstorm, had his story within a story finally plotted out, at least in broad strokes. It would be a complex tale of lost love and revenge. It simmered inside of him. It waited to be told. Then suddenly it fell flat. Pancake flat, flat tire flat. He hated flat tires. They swerved to the side of the road, the kalunk, kalunk, kalunk. But today would see a rejuvenation, a resuscitation. He would feel the surge of emotion rise up in him in this 1st of November, writing the full story of Scratch an Old Wound, what he hoped would be a complex and exhilarating post-World War II tale that he had begun only to discover that for a while the juggling of time and detail was beyond him, would now be his catharsis, his ascension to some higher personal plateau. The world today was in such need. Certainly the COP26 gathering in Glasgow for the next 2 weeks would tell everyone what the future of everyone on the earth might be. It was looking bleak, though, no doubt about that. Still, as depressing as the environmental degradation of the earth was, as simultaneously hopeful and full of trepidation about the survival of the species as everyone seemed to be, Gronsky, the writer, was on a roll. And I'll stop there, if that's okay.
Well, I could listen all night, but we'll let you stop there, Bill. Love that story within a story and how it's evolving. That's beautiful. And we're going to throw it out to the audience for some questions here, but I'll start it off by saying, so, yeah, that fast. So just the discipline of having committed to that last month was enough to push it to the end?
Pretty much. You know, it took a lot of time. I mean, it seriously interfered with my leisure activity, I have to say. And, you know, and a lot of research. And part of the book is explaining Gronsky's research and trying to get details because, you know, this character, Danny Hawkins, crosses from Montreal to Vancouver Island in search of vengeance. And he stops off along the way at different places. And so it's a Canada of the post-war period and just trying to catch images of that and actually enjoying crossing the country slightly before or slightly after I was born. You know, it was kind of a trip, I have to say.
Beautiful. Awesome. All right. I'll just throw it out there. If anyone out in Zoom land or here in the live landing has anything they'd like to ask Bill, just holler it out. Put up your hand.
David, can I ask, when you write, do you read aloud?
No. Occasionally, little bits and pieces. For instance, in this book, there's a haiku, a series of haikus.
Yeah.
So that just pop in there. So so some little bits and pieces, but no.
Then it's your reading that does it, but the text sounds like, you know, it sounds so much like somebody telling it aloud. So that's why I asked if it was so you don't sit back and tell us. Okay.
Well, just to clarify, I mean, a lot of my writing is done as if it is to be read aloud. I mean, I've learned to do that, I think, you know, and I also recognize that there are some things that just shouldn't be probably read aloud because they're out of context or they don't quite sound right. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Well, and the narrator's voice is kind of more of a spoken narration, right, than a written narration. And yet at the same time, it's got some of the eloquence of written narration in there too. So, yeah, beautiful. Anybody else have any questions out there? Nope. Okay.
Fair enough.
All right. And your books are available from your website then?
From my website, I haven't added the latest store. I have now 3 stores. The Laughing Oyster in Courtney now has some, and so I'm, branching out wherever I can go, but online or in Cumberland, Demman Island, and the Laughing Oyster in terms of bookstores at the moment.
Yeah. For those out in Zoomland, though, they can go to your website at
Yep.
Engleson.ca.
And there'll be also links to Amazon and or other places to download the ebook, if whatever. Yeah.
Excellent. Super. All right. Well, thank you so much, Bill. That was really enjoyable, and I gobbled up every word.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna jump back in house here. I saw Dean. Where did Dean go? There's Dean. Okay, so Dean Lamount has graced us with his presence and is going to share some of his. Oh, you want Victoria to go first? Okay. Okay, he's not quite. We caught him off guard. We're going to let Victoria step up ahead of him. Yeah, we're flexible. We're flexible. It's all good. All right, and we'll let Char adjust the camera there, and we'll bring that microphone stand down a little bit there. Yeah.
There we are. Is that
There we go. That's good.
Okay. Not my size now.
Yeah, we got the mic. All right.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Dean, for putting me in before you. Okay. Well, I have 2 that I would like to read. The first one is a rather sad mood, and the second one is a little happier, well, quite a lot happier. But this one is the mood of the moment. It's called Desolate. This tree is going to fall. Weight distribution cannot prevent it. Rings and rings and rings and rings, denoting age like wrinkles. Everything gravitates to this down, falling time, when limbs and body hit the earth, breaking, twirling, crashing. Precious moments hacked away until nothing remains, lost forever. No mourners, no legacy, no peace. Was it worth the struggle, the giving, the caring? No one to care for, no one to care. And the rain falls, but washes nothing away. Do please wash it away. Make the mind clear again. At least let some glimmer make it through. Just enough to cling on to with worn, bleeding fingers. Searching for a reason for anything at all. If there is anything, anyone, anywhere. Hold on, hold on. This tree is going to fall. And I took a trip to the West Coast a few days ago, and it was the best thing I did. Step back 45 years. She was on her way to a place to heal the soul, driving out to unknown weather in Tofino. Midday and the sun is high. The sky is clear and blue. Will this last to the end of her journey? The roads are quiet, very quiet. Quieter than they were 45 years ago when she first came to Canada. She only had to pull over 3 times to let a speeder go by. Only herself and her dog on this road. The highway is hers. Even the new section with a multi-million-dollar price tag is here just for her today, sharing with nobody. It feels as if the red carpet has been rolled out before her as the 126 kilometers roll under the wheels of her car. The mountain landscape welcomed her, which is much better than the paparazzi. The mountain landscape, oh, I did that. Why is it in twice? Okay. The gift at the end of the runway is almost hot sun and blue skies. The wild Pacific Ocean, relatively calm, rolls onto sifted, sandy beaches, leaving behind abandoned shells, sand dollars, and seaweed. The beach this day seems to belong to her and her dog, Nikita. She has escaped to another world and time clock. The peace feeds her soul. No room for worries or sadness. Nobody knows she's here. It feels so surreal, as if she has taken a trip through the door at the back of the wardrobe. She decides not to go back that evening. She just needed to stay where she was, back in time, where her soul felt peace. There was nothing and nobody to stop her, nobody to care where she was. With so few tourists in town, finding a room for her and her dog should be an easy task. After coffee at Wickeninish Inn, she drove to Cox Bay and the Pacific Sands Resort. She secured a one-bedroom unit, fully equipped with everything she needed, even a toothbrush and paste, dog bowls, dog towels, treats, and a roll of doggy poop bags. It's lovely. Even an ocean view. Not having planned to stay the night here, she made a short trip to Tofino's Center to buy dog food and other needed supplies. Spontaneous getaways are rare for her, a girl who usually packs everything, including the kitchen sink. All she had brought were warm sweaters, jackets, and rain gear. No baggage, and it felt so good. She walked the empty beach. Nikita loved the new experience, sniffing the new smells, running and biting at the waves. After supper, consisting of a Wickeninish sandwich and dog kibble, they took a hike up the Sunset Trail to pay their respects to the sun retiring after a glorious stay. Was she really awake, or was this beautiful evening a dream? Back on the patio outside her unit, she drank peppermint tea and talked to the moon. The gas fire was turned on. Her ears were filled with the soothing sound of waves peacefully kissing the shore. She could not imagine a more glorious day in any dream. She closed her eyes at the end of the road to Tofino, a place to heal the soul. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I had another friend of mine who went out there the other day and said there were 6 people on the entire stretch of Long Beach, and maybe you were one of them. I don't know. Yeah.
Beaches were empty. I went to Wickeninish, Cox Bay, and then I went to oh dear, what's my favorite place? I just forgot it. The one that's way up at the top of town. Tonquin Bay. Bay. Nobody there hardly, like just a few couples of people.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And that
real
West Coast is, you're right, it is so healing out there. It doesn't matter what you drag out there with you, it's not with you when you come back. It's washed.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Super. Thank you for sharing those. That was lovely. All right. In person, we've got Dean Lamount ready to rock and roll now. Bringing us another Ned story, perhaps, or
Yeah, I guess so. Hi there. My name is Ned. Hello, Ned. This is called Confessions of an Amateur Mystic. Actually, my name is Dean. Ned is Dean spelled backwards, as Stephen Novak and Winter Darby have figured out. So let's cut through some of the bullshit here. We're on the West Coast here, so let's keep it real for the time being. Also, this building used to be a church, so it's something of a public confessional where we come to bare our buttocks, or I mean our souls, and it can be very therapeutic. But before I begin, let me give you a warning. Some of this material contains references to Eastern religions, psychic or occult phenomena, yoga, or even horrors, devotion. Yes, my friends, I must confess, I practice yoga, I meditate, I have experienced astral projection, the partial awakening of the third eye, telepathy, I'd stay away from that one if I were you. And the meeting of ascended or something beings made of a light. What a crock, you may say. But consider, when you flip on a light switch, the light photons or light waves instantaneously go from rest to near the speed of light. Is this not a miracle? Is this beautiful planet that we're doing our best to screw up not a miracle? You can pick up your phone and dial up almost anyone on the planet. As Hamlet once said, is E not equal to MC squared? As Hamlet said, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophies, Horatio. Believe what you will, Polonius, but today I must confess upon this altar that I have borne witness to many so-called miracles in my life. It is not an exaggeration to say that the litany of my life has been punctuated, perhaps even chopped into pieces, by inexplicable events. Just to take a minor example, one day I was taking a ferry to the Sunshine Coast, comfortable in my seat, and being in my occult phase, as I later called it, I began meditating on my third eye or eyebrow chakra. After some yoga breathing, the mind monkeys started settling down and I began meditating. Suddenly, bright lilac lavender light began flooding, pulsing into my consciousness. Wow, I thought, this is far out. After some time, the light dissipated, and I got out of my chair to stretch my legs. As I walked down the aisle, I saw a beautiful young woman sitting a few rows down. She was holding a scarf exactly the color of the light I had been witnessing. She smiled, so I said, "That's funny. I was meditating and I saw a light just the color of your scarf." "Yes," she answered, "I saw you were meditating, so I sent you that color." Wow, Ned thought, this is really far. It turned out that the woman was a Baha'i devotee. So Ned got the address and later made a pilgrimage to the colony, a house in Gibsons. But alas, when Ned visited later, he found that the angel was married and trying to keep her husband celibate. And the Bhaktas seemed to be so mired in dogma and ritual that 2 days was all Ned could stomach. So it was goodbye, celestial heartbeat, soulmate. Hello, BC fairies. Another time, hitchhiking in Nova Scotia, Ned picked up a woman who claimed to have left her body when she was walking in her kitchen. "I was going through menopause at the time," she explained, so that might have something to do with it. Soon Ned was staying in her house, attempting to join her and a male friend who ostensibly made astral journeys nocturnally. But no luck. Ned could get into the deeply relaxed vibratory state, but could not get aloft, alas. So soon Ned was riding his thumb back out of town again, the story of his life. Yes, Ned had a hunger for psychic and spiritual experiences, and that was partly because of earlier inner events. In adolescence, he regularly hiked up the North Shore Mountains behind Vancouver in his dreams, then flew down over the city. A Freudian would say that it stemmed from high school, all those girls in miniskirts. Or back in Yorkville in the 60s, the first time Ned got really stoned, he felt like there was a big hand under his crutch, lifting him up off his chair. Hello, Kundalini, serpent power, awakening of chakras. Indeed, Ned often thought the measure of his life could be marked not by physical events like residences, jobs, but by psychic, even or spiritual stepping stones or obelisks. These mark a turning point, a deepening of consciousness, sometimes in a awakening to lies and deception, misbeliefs, Ned later called them. And so the chaff would be blown away in the wind, but the kernels would remain. And so Ned would rise early to do yoga, to meditate, to awaken and run energy through his chakras, which are as real to him as the room he is in right now. And so he would commune with his spiritual lights, his teachers or gurus, who are as real to him as you are to me. And so, even if you believe all this is crap, believe in Jesus or justice or humanity or the plight and fate of the planet. For that, my friends, is the heart of matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you for that entry into the spiritual realm. Uplifting the electric mermaid to higher and higher heights. Appreciate it. Awesome. All right, we're going to go back to Gibson's Landing now, and Kathleen Vance is there waiting, ready to unmute. There she is.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. All right. We're back in trying to figure out who killed Petunia, the garden club president, the detective, and the various garden club members, and I'm trying to figure it out. So, was there a fracas, a rhubarb at the meeting, Mr. Root? Hell no. Once I saw that the club president was plowing through with her resolutions to buy only native species and boycott all the so-called invaders, which would have meant replacing all of Holly's beloved plants in our community garden. I lost heart. I mean, Holly had already felt so undermined that she had left town, disappeared without a trace. I loved Holly, and I know she cared for me, but she wasn't about to stay around to tend to red flowering currant, Oregon grape, salal, and salmonberry. Everyone has their limits. Officer, I genuinely cared for Holly, but you can see she was a fanatic fan of invasive species. She would have brought the whole club into disrepute. I'm sorry for you, Doug, that she left, but as president, I had to stop her ideas from taking root in our club. Who are you calling a fanatic, Madam President? Officer, do you drink coffee? Do you like chocolate? Do you eat potatoes? For heaven's sake. So many of our foods come from plants that were introduced from elsewhere. There was a fanatic in the garden club, but it wasn't Holly. Are you referring to Petunia, Mr. Root? Did you see her at the last meeting? The one where you wanted to confront the fanatic in the club? Petunia. Good Lord, no. Petunia was a wonderful, kind person. She loved all plants. It was Petunia who calmed me down and convinced me that I needed to accept that Holly was gone and stop blaming the club. Now, Doug, it's time to tell this kind officer the truth. Everyone knows about Holly and Gary Oak and how she was always trailing after him. I'm sure they ran away together. A complete lie, officer. If you don't believe me, check the security camera in the church's activity room. Look at the video data from last month's meeting. You'll see that Holly was agitated but was holding my hand the whole time for comfort. Lavinia, please come over here, my rugged officer called to his deputy. He appeared to be whispering instructions to her, and she was smiling but listening intently. She then hurried out of the room. Be careful, officer. Lavinia looks a tad too clingy in my book. Trust me, I'm a master gardener, and I know clingy. Next, the officer called, ignoring my comments, and in walked dapper Leo, the old lion known as the dandy of the garden club. In answer to your question, I certainly do remember seeing Petunia at the meeting. I may be the only person in the club who really notices Petunia. You see, my family came over on the Mayflower before they came from Spain, and Petunia was from South America, so we were birds of a feather, you might say. But what I can't get out of my mind is how that night, during a slideshow, Petunia suddenly stared at the screen, her eyes filled with tears, and she was snuffling. Allergies, obviously, officer. As club president, I was working hard on a resolution to replace all allergy-provoking plants in our gardens with allergy-friendly ones. Officer, I noticed you scratching. That's a bad bite on your neck. Try some lemon balm. Just crush a handful of leaves in your hand and rub them on your neck. Rosemary, basil, and mint will work quite well too, if you have the time. I've had enough of this. I don't believe Petunia was allergic to anything. It was something she saw. Furthermore, I've had it up to here with your insistence on natural solutions only to all problems. Okay, plant more hydrangeas, magnolias, verbena, just because they're low producers of pollen. But to cut down all the beech, birch, cedar, pine, and alder, not that I mind getting rid of the alder, they're just weeds, but the others I'd miss. I don't care if people are more likely to be allergic to them. And don't get me started on pest control. My partner Timothy was so fed up. He wrote you of his intent to introduce a motion to invite a pest control product salesman to our next meeting. He was being driven out of his own garden by slugs, aphids, thrifts, whiteflies, cuddling moths, and ants. The house was even worse. We had squirrels in the attic, raccoons in the basement, and mice in the walls. I finally told Timothy to ignore your advice and call in the heavy artillery. Apparently he had, because that fateful day I returned to the house to see an exterminator truck in the driveway. If only he had waited, but he must have despaired and disappeared. That was the last I saw of Timothy. And that's the end. Well, not completely the end, but it's the end for this week.
And you're leaving us hanging again, Kathleen. That's good. That's good. We'll carry the tension through for another month. Excellent. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. All right. And we're going to bounce back into Port Alberni now. And right here in Char's Landing, Joelunchbucket is going to share us a little poetry, I'm guessing. Hello.
Joelunchbucket.
Come on up to the mic there, Joe. Welcome, Rachel and Jeremy. Rachel, are you going to read anything tonight? It's open mic. We could squeeze you in possibly later if you brought something along. All right, we'll give you 5 minutes. Perfect.
How was that?
That was
anyone
pretty good.
hear? Does anyone want to hear?
Oh, we want to hear. Of course, we always want to hear from you, Bob.
When prime directive is election and the U.S. 1% minority instead of the majority rules, does democracy exist?
Hang
Does
on
the
there,
world-
Bob. It's a little quiet. We're going to just maybe turn the volume up a little bit, Char. Or... Oh, you did. Okay. All right. Can you start that one again? Yeah.
Okay. Is the world a level playing field, or is common sense and truth on the blacklist? I get through. Peace, increased population, and race for breathing space resulted in WW2 aggression. Is lobbying legal bribery, and does war industry and corporate church state media monopoly prevent recession? Did WW2 and subsequent rebuilding end depression? Did CIA buy a Polish pope to raise Iron Curtain and vanquish godless communism? Did US create NATO to continue Cold War and rein in Russia? Was German President Angela Merkel wise when UK membership in NATO she denied? Did NATO override her decision and munitions supplied? Jimmy Carter labeled US as world's biggest warring nation. Do they exact concessions from the weak like a modern Mongol state? Leaders never face collateral damage and cannon fodder fate, and their lives are not at stake. Is diminishing Russia and China US mission, and as long as no US troops arrive in body bags, there is no opposition. Stalin changed the UK-Polish boundaries to avert friction generated by Hitler and WW2. If Zelensky and Biden had negotiated with Russia, could Russia's UK invasion have been averted too? Do we have the technology to divert asteroids and colonize space, or will we be saved by grace? Did COVID viruses come from space, or is capitalist greed motivating pharma dollar chase? Could zealots wishing to hasten the rapture of, or generals seeing that all is lost, initiate nuclear holocaust? Will ending right of might be the mark of civilization? Or will US submit to UN New World Order only if they agree with their arbitration? Should we be careful what we wish for? Can representation by population enable a have-not to take what G20 have got? Do politicians abide by the majority in US democracy, or do the 1% run both parties in the land of the free? And they're really an autocracy, but not as peaceful as a bee or ant colony. Gandhi promised one world religion and government, promoted. Would united world solidarity have a better chance to fend off ET? Or have they come not to colonize, but to recruit the most practiced killers in our galaxy?
All right. Thank you, Bob. One of your deadliest verses yet. Sweet. Very good. Thank you. All right. We're going to stay here in the house. Did Laurie Blakely make it? No. Oh, yes, you did. You're at the back. Thank you. Save for the back of the house. Laurie is coming forward. She's got a 10-minute spotlight this evening. So with Laurie, we never know what we're going to get. Will it be the manual for a toaster? Will it be the stand-up comedy of Who knows? And we are just ready to take whatever it is. Laurie. good evening.
Hi. So I didn't actually know that I would be here until just a little bit earlier today. So I'm sorry I'm not better prepared. I would be if I wasn't so freaking lazy. Sorry about that. Everything exhausts me these days, like things like waking up, eating, breathing. It's kind of tough lately. Several of you have heard my latest bit, my rant on the neighborhood cats that like to party at my house. And I realized that I just need to lean in and like create a little like kitty cat club disco for them in my yard. Like, I think cats like music and some little laser lights, and yeah, I'm gonna send them all home drunk and pregnant. And but I haven't read any instruction manuals for a while, so I decided I'd do that instead.
All right.
This is right. This is the blue nose rug hooker. All right, the blue nose rug hooker. The simplest and quickest method of making hooked yarn rugs. A child can use it. Article 7152, printed in the USA. Lubricate sliding parts with Vaseline. Instructions for using the blue nose rug hooker. The first move in making a hooked rug is to stretch your burlap pattern. Take 4 strips of wood about 2 inches wide and 3/4 inch thick, long enough to cross at the corners. Narrower strips than 2 inches will do for the smaller size patterns. Draw a straight pencil line along each strip about 3/4 inch from the inner edge. This line is a guide to keep patterns straight while tacking in. It's very old. I read the patent in Canada is, where is it? 1926, right? It's very delicate. It's like me. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I put on my fancy pajamas just to come here. Okay. To thread blue nose rug hooker, take hooker in your left hand with wire. Press her foot just below the eye of the needle with thumb and forefinger on each side of eye, as shown in figure 1. Then holding end of yarn over eye with thumb and finger, push yarn through eye and down through to about point of needle with wire threader provided for the purpose. If yarn does not go all the way toward point with first push of threader, put the threader in at the top of the needle and push yarn all the way down. This last applies more particularly to the deluxe model blue nose hooker, which is for finer yarns about ordinary knitting size. Now take the yarn in right hand, get it inside the wire coil by passing underneath coil, as in figure 2, and with a circular motion, bring the yarn inside the coil, as in figure 3. If you are using extra heavy yarn, you may have to squeeze in the little blue blade, which lies inside the needle, so that the end will not catch in the burlap. This would only be necessary at the start and when using very coarse yarn. Ordinarily, you can forget about this entirely. Commence hooking by drawing presser foot all the way up, then push needle through burlap pattern as shown in figure 4. Next, push presser foot down on burlap, still holding needle down as in figure 5. Then still holding down the presser foot draw with the needle up all the way as in figure 6. Now force needle ahead to another step and push it down through burlap as in figure 7. A slight downward pressure at top of wooden handle and an upward pressure at the ferrule will force, I said force the needle forward to make the full length of step for which it is set. This is shown by the direction of arrows in illustration at right. It is the same motion used in a stove lifter to cover the lid. I am sure we're all familiar with the action of a stove lifting lid handle. Don't forget, there'll be a test later. If these instructions seem lengthy or difficult to follow, remember that you can do it much quicker, so we can tell you how it is done. It is indeed very simple. Keep pulling the yarn from the ball as you use it, so the machine does not have to do the pulling or work will be uneven. There must be no drag on the yarn. I have to use the washroom. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
My God, Laurie, where did you find that machine?
It's in my collection, Derek. I'm taking names later for anyone that's interested.
I think there's some research to be done in instructions and how they have changed over time. I don't think there's too many people who could follow that these days, unless they've done IKEA, and then maybe then. Thanks for sharing that, Laurie. That was fun. All right, we have another in-house presenter, performer, Rachel Rose, and I think I heard a baby at the back. There's Rachel. Coming on up. She brought her chorus on her back.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
All right. I think this will work. All right. I just got a couple today. So this one's in the fairy garden: bluebells, daisies, dandelions, fairy footsteps, cherries, apples, plums, magnolias, cedars. 15 days of pure sweet beauty, followed by fruit, juicy, luscious forests, intermingling root systems, feeding through the seasons, growing for just that reason. Flourish, blooming, expanding, and growing, self-sowing garden, fungus, lichen, blue, green, algae, phosphorus, pollinators, butterflies, moths, and stick bugs in the fairy garden. Okay. And I forgot I was a dragon. I forgot I was a dragon. Then he came in like a hurricane and swept me off my feet 1,000 feet into the air. Your bright sunshine was a great surprise. And then I landed and floated, outstretched wings deep down into the branches of the great hemlock. Could not help but curl up and purr a peaceful purr. And when the moon was high in the sky, she prayed for the hurricane, the next storm, to awaken the dragon fire. And upon her wings she soars. That's it. That's all I got tonight.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to the chorus. Okay, and our next reader is live here at Char's Landing as well. We've got Karen Poirier is going to share some. Where did you go, Karen? Are you going to share some prose with us tonight, or some poetry?
I thought I'd read an excerpt from my book.
Oh, lovely. All right. And if you give the info to Karl, we can put the in the chat. We'll put where your book's available so people can have access to it. Be great. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Not yet.
Not yet.
We're going to have to get a little closer to that mic.
How's that? Okay. I wonder if I put it down a bit.
Yeah, bring it down a little bit. I think it's a little. Just pull it down. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, is that better?
That's better. Yeah.
Okay. It was that time of life when, like the road that seemed to travel forever across the landscape, her future felt like an endless journey ahead of her with nothing but time and adventures to experience. She was 16, filled with hope, determination, and confidence in that inner voice that told her she could do just about anything. Ellen shivered in the cool pink and gray dawn and pulled her warm hat further down her head to protect herself from the spring drizzle that hung in the air and drifted through her clothing, right through to her flesh and bones. It was early June, and after a spell of warm weather in May, the uncharacteristic warmth was relieved by some cooler spring showers. She pulled up to the last house on the milk route and turned to look at the 2 remaining bottles that teetered in the wooden box at the back of the milk wagon. The cool mist settled on the outside of the glass bottles, droplets of glassy moisture that trickled down the outside of them. A crown of thick golden cream that topped the lily-white milk seemed to push up the small round cardboard lids that sealed the milk at the top of the thick glass necks of the bottles. Ellen jumped out of the delivery wagon and picked up the 2 cold, wet bottles of milk with her gloved hands. She had to be careful because they were slippery and she didn't want to drop them on the ground on her way to the front doorstep of the house. Heaving a sigh, she walked up the stone pathway to the front door. She glanced up at the gold-colored metal doorknob that was silent on the locked white door, and she put the 2 full bottles of milk on one side of the porch and picked up the 2 empty ones that the family had left there. The tattered screen door had been left unhooked and looked as though it had swung wide open and frozen there. Oh, it must be nice to sleep in, thought Ellen. What time did you get up? The door answered with silence, and Ellen turned and walked towards the milk wagon. The dozing street that stretched in front of her was lined with sleeping houses in the misty gray morning light, not yet aroused from their nighttime slumbering. Ellen had been delivering milk to customers all through fall and winter, and many of the mornings were pitch dark, as well as being a frigid -40 degrees. She stayed with a family that had a dairy farm situated on the edge of town. To pay for her room and board while she went to school, her job was to deliver the milk early in the morning after the cows were milked and the milk was bottled. As she was driving back to the farm, she was overtaken with a sense of foreboding, a strange kind of loss. Was this homesickness? Perhaps she was just tired and needed some rest from the grueling routine of work and school. Still, it was hard to shake this unsettled feeling. That heavy, gray, damp sensation followed her all the way back to the Schultz's dairy farm. Mr. and Mrs. Schultz tried very hard to make her feel at home, but she missed her family, even when Mrs. Schultz made those wonderful German pastries and tarts, and the aroma of fresh baking filled the air. Ellen felt that it just couldn't compare with Mum's Saskatoon pies and homemade bread. On her way up to her tiny room at the top of the stairs, she carried a mug of hot tea with milk and sugar in it, then settled in with a warm quilt wrapped around her legs, and relaxed into an overstuffed chair that sat in one corner of her semi-darkened room. Her memories chased each other in her mind, seeming to rise, then evaporate like the steam from her piping hot tea. The soothing heat of the hot mug felt good in her cold hands that were wrapped around the mug, and she sighed as she breathed in the calming warmth. It was Sunday morning, and she couldn't quite shake the habit Mum had ingrained in the family that Sunday was the day of rest. And so she spent what was left of her morning remembering her life with her family on the farm. I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
And my husband sent rhubarb from his garden, so anybody that wants some, help yourself.
Yes. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that, Karen. Very evocative of a time and place and an emotion. And yeah, beautiful. Thank you. All right. We got another local reader. Dan Biggs is going to share some prose with us. Come on up to the mic there, Dan. I'm guessing a short story is coming, maybe?
No. Remember last time I read the first chapter of the novel?
Yes, yes.
So I got chapter 2.
Chapter 2. All right. We're getting it.
So just to give you a bit of background,
yeah.
Probably don't remember. The story, some of the main characters started off with the police chief discovering a body up on the hill after they were trying to seize some illegal liquor. And the woman spotted him going up there and followed him, and her name was Ellen. So chapter 2, it's sort of from her point of view. And the body that they found was a fella named Henry. So chapter 2. Ellen Marco watched Henry Mish make his way up the sloping boardwalk towards her, his feet fumbling, his torso wobbling. She moved between him and her sons. He's too boisterous to avoid, impossible to ignore. The birthmark stood out. Helpless he is, probably lost it down the mud. The birthmark was strawberry, skewed from the center of his high forehead, and made him look like a drunken cyclops. No, he's too meager to be a cyclops, but drunk he is. Her face tightened as she watched him stagger into the railing, using it to stop from falling, then leaning against it. Hurry up, she said to her sons as they passed. Good day, Miss Marco, Henry said, raising his hand, doffing it empty. Good day, Mr. Mish, Ellen said without returning his gaze. A man shuffled back. Henry began to cuss him. Get back down your hole, you wog, or I'll rip your slanty eyes out. The words spiked pain in her heart, charcoal in her mouth. She wanted to leap into the sky and murmur away with the gulls and ravens. She looked out to the cresting sea, then breathed the fresh air. Come on, she said, hurrying her sons along. Such language. He is only yelling at the poor man because he's shorter in Japanese. He never picks on someone his own size. Isn't it against the law to drink alcohol? Ellen said, soaped up, scrubbing grease from a frying pan. You know it is. You wouldn't know it around here. What happened, Ellen? Joseph asked, looking up from his paper. It's that Henry Mish. He was drunk again, right on the boardwalk in broad daylight, cursing at a poor Asian man in front of the kids and everybody in earshot. I know what you're saying. Henry is very important, she said, interrupting her husband, dropping the pan in the sink. And it's a good thing Mr. Aikido owns this house. We don't have to pay that man rent like most people. We can't ignore him, Ellen. It's hard when he just lives up the walk from us. He's suffocating, rude, and hates everybody. Joseph sipped a sip of his coffee and went back to his paper. Ellen went on. I heard the other day he beat one of the Japanese workers nearly unconscious down the lower walk. What do you want me to say? I'm sorry we have to live here. There's no housing over at the mine or anywhere else. Yes, I know, and we need the school. And we need a teacher like you. You're happy teaching, aren't you? Yes, it's one of the things I look forward to. The town needs you. And the new books came in on the last steamer. Why don't they arrest him? It should be unacceptable we have to live with that kind of behavior. He has been talked to, yet just talk. It doesn't change a thing. Maybe for a few days, but then he's right back to his old drunk self. I can see her upset. I'll talk to Constable Prescott again about it. In any other place, he'd be in jail. That pathetic building they call a police station is built with lumber from his mill, built on his land. All the buildings here are built from lumber from his mill. The constable probably owes him something. You should watch what you say, especially around the children. They repeat everything they hear. And what kind of men get sent here to be policemen anyway? We don't want anything getting back to him. We don't want any trouble. I'm sure he's in business with their boss. Noticing their boy standing in the bedroom doorway, they fell silent. Why is Mummy mad, Daddy? Mummy and I are just talking. About the mean man today? Yes, you don't need to worry about that. Take Adam and go back to your room. Supper won't be for a while. You can go back and play. You can help me chop wood later after supper. As the boys hurried off, Ellen wiped soap suds from her hands. How long do you think we have to be in this place? Joseph snapped his paper and waggled his head. We've talked about this before. I'm making more money here than I could anywhere else. He lowered his paper and seeing all the expression washed from her face, said flatly, maybe a few years until the mine plays out. Her feelings burst inward. Her sinking heart became the center of the room. No, this is more than about me. Our boys are going to need a proper school, and the mine might not play out for 10 years. Joseph folded his paper. His chair screeched against the floor as he pushed away from the table. You're a good teacher. When they're older, we can send them off to school. He went out with his back turned. As the door closed, she picked up the frying pan and slammed it on the counter. The playing sounds from the room stopped. She looked out the window. Through the round crown glass pane, she could see Henry Mish's house on the hill, just a few doors and a flight of steps up the boardwalk, bigger than the houses around it, built in that spot for the view of the bay and the village. The opaque nature of the window glass blurred the view. The house's location gave it an obliged bearing over the village that showed that there was a time when Henry was sober enough to be industrious, had goals and ambition. She never had seen that side, if there ever was such a side. Maybe he was just in the right place at the right time. The story of the frontier, but the building, the sawmill, the town itself spoke of such a time. He chose that spot to build his house to survey what he considered his kingdom. Whatever the history was or had tried to be, instead of a benevolent king, the court jester had become the tyrant. As she looked out over the hustling village, Ellen remembered the rumors she had heard not long after her family arrived, that Henry had once been married to a native woman who had left him before he moved to Jedway. Why she left was even more nebulous than the rumors of her existence. Some said that she had beat her, and after a long time, she had finally found the courage to leave him. Others said the woman's family intervened and drove Henry away. And others said he had killed her and dumped her body in the salt chuck and escaped justice by moving to Jedway. The rumors varied, as rumors do, perhaps saying more about those who spread them than Henry. Given what she saw of Henry, Ellen assumed the truth lied somewhere between the extremes of flight and death, with nothing gainful in between. And only last week, after turning from a trip to the big city down south, Seattle or Vancouver, wasn't clear which one, Henry was boasting that he had gotten married and his new wife would be arriving on the next steamer. Upon hearing this, Ellen didn't believe it. But Henry was boasting continued. She knew it must be true. Ellen began to wonder, who would marry such a man? This woman must be a prostitute he hired, or a mental patient, an alcoholic like himself, or a drug addict, or all of the above. or a poor girl that had been purchased from destitute parents. It's unlikely to be someone to settle him down and change his ways. The chilled air made the rain heavy, pelting a anxious rhythm on the tin roofs. Flat drops flew apart against the beams of the boardwalk and splashed upwards onto facades. Ellen and a few others walked gingerly down the wooden steps to the wharf. She was burdened by a heavy rubber coat that weighed on her shoulders and forced memories of the umbrella that she had brought when they first arrived. It didn't last a week. Mr. Ikeda had given the family these slickers, made for fishermen, not long after they arrived. Everyone who could afford it had at least one. As she moved down the steps, she spotted the steamer rounding the point, coursing through the flat, rain-perforated sea. Steam from the stack drooped away from the vessel, vanishing in the watery air. Ellen looked like the others was on the wharf on that miserable day for one reason. Their curiosity had pulled them from comfort to see the new wife, Henry's new wife. And as if by design, the rain stopped as the steamer came to the wharf. And at last she walked down the gangway, two porters following with the bags. Although she was heavily clothed and wearing a knitted wool cap, Ellen could see how young and beautiful she was. What was she doing here? Why was she with Henry? What catastrophe had befallen her? The poor girl. Henry stepped out from the gathered townfolk, stiff off his slipper. He was wearing his best clothes, and he looked sober. He offered her his hand and said something Ellen could not hear. Her face was pale and doll-like. She looked like a spellbound child. Her mouth opened slightly and her head tilted, and after a pause that felt long, she meekly offered Henry her gloved hand. Shouldn't they hug each other or kiss? A day passed, and Ellen's curiosity burnt like a void sucking her soul inward. She must know more about this young woman. Since she arrived, she had not left Henry's house. Ellen had to teach the next day. She ended the lessons early and sent her boys to play at the neighbor's house. She hurried home and made biscuits. She knew Henry was at work and at his sawmill, and with the biscuits still warm, she made her way up the boardwalk. There was no answer after the first knock. After the second, Ellen heard a door close and footsteps. The door creaked open, a sliver, and half the woman's face peered around the door edge. Her skin was pale, hair mussed, a tattered blanket hung over her shoulder. Hi, I'm Ellen Marco. I just lived a few doors down and thought I would welcome you. I made some biscuits. They're straight from the oven. The young woman cleared her throat and made a frigid smile. I'm Margaret. Nice to meet you. Ellen noticed Margaret was looking past her as if searching to see if anybody else was watching. Sorry, I'd invite you in, but I haven't found a kettle, and I'm still cleaning. The house is still messy. That's okay. We can have tea at my place if you need a break, Ellen said. Margaret smiled brightly. That would be nice, yes. I could use a break. You can come in and wait while I dress if you don't mind. As she entered, Ellen smelled soap. A bucket and a mop sat next to the door. Clean dishes were arrayed to dry on the counter. Clothing was sorted into piles on the floor. Salal leaves rested in a cracked glass vase on the kitchen table. An old blanket drawn over the window looked out of place, an artifact. It was faded and tattered, sunlight drayed through holes. Ellen glanced around. There was what looked like 3 bedrooms. Ellen's house only had 2. There was also a narrow door, must be a closet or a pantry, and the kitchen was partitioned off by a thin wall from the dining room. In Ellen's house, the kitchen and dining room occupied the same place. A short hallway led to a windowed back door, and Ellen could see a 2-door outhouse and a woodshed. A hulking iron stove stood against the wall in the dining room, its pipe angled up through the ceiling beams. Heat from the stovepipe and the smoke from the stove had discolored the beams and the boards that sheeted the roof. Off the dining room was a small sitting room. There was no sitting room in Ellen's house. With the clunk of a wood door, Ellen turned around. Margaret had put on a gray and black cowichan sweater and heavy denim skirt. Her face was still pale and her blonde curls had been tied back with a blue ribbon. I'm ready. You look nice. That ribbon really brings out your eyes. A little color appeared in Margaret's face. I'll have to show you the village if we have time, perhaps after our tea. Yes, that would be nice. On their way, Ellen and Margaret ran into Mrs. Preston and Ellen's 2 sons. Oh, good, Miss Preston said. I was hoping you would be home. One of the fish boats just came in. I need to get down there before they sell out. I was just about to fetch them. Oh, yes, this is Margaret And Margaret, this is Joan. She just lives at the end of the boardwalk.
Dan, sorry to interrupt. Is there much more? Because we're running a little long.
Oh,
here.
okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's quite
Yeah,
a bit more.
yeah, better say. The 5 minutes is getting stretched, Ollie. That's all
Yeah,
right.
okay.
But interesting stuff. Thank you so much for
All
doing
right.
that. We'll look forward to the next part next month. Thank you. All right, and we're back with another in-house reader. Stephen Novik is going to share some of his performance art with us here. Stephen, come on up. Dun, 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 dun.
You coming?
You're good.
This sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just try my usual stuff then, if you don't mind. This one is entitled A Church Locked on Sunday. A church locked on Sunday. That doesn't seem right. A church locked on Sunday, and up that stairs a flight, the child ran, filled with delight, even after each chance at 5 doors to get into a church locked on Sunday. This poem is entitled Many Mechanical Miracles, and I wrote it because of my handyman father. Ever have those moments when a favorite toy, gadget, gizmo, stereo, etc. doesn't seem to be working just right? So you leave it alone for some time and then come back to it later. And it works perfectly until the next faulty moment. So you leave it alone for some time again. But now you really like this particular toy, gadget, gizmo, stereo, etc. And there's only so much you can do with your limited knowledge of machinery. But there is a gentleman in the house who can fix anything, and you know that. So why didn't you ask him to look this over earlier? You can't say. Maybe it's a test of your own confidence in his field of expertise. Because come on, you've got this. Wow, amazingly. And it's so easy too. Until the next faulty moment. So you leave it alone for some time. Again. Thanks, Dad. And one more for you all tonight. This is entitled Vaping in the Gender Neutral Washroom. Sitting in the classroom thinking this ain't my bag. I'm sitting in the classroom jonesing for a drag. Watching the wall clock, waiting on the wall clock to sound the hour dong. I'm grabbing for my backpack, loading up my bong. I'll be vaping in the gender neutral washroom. Vaping in the washroom. Boys and girls and hey, everyone in between. The safest space for those who want the green. Back in Grassboard City, and I'm sitting with this bloke. Together we're planning to break out just to take a toke. We're passing notes on rolling paper, and to me that is the point. This man will never find the evidence of our joints. I'll be vaping in the gender-neutral washroom. Vaping in the washroom. Boys and girls, and hey, everyone in between. The space is safe for those who want the green. Back again from another break. Will this cycle never end? Perhaps one more distraction is called for once again. Ha! The teacher cannot see us behind our screen of smoke. Math and social studies. This class is such a joke. I be vaping in the gender-neutral washroom. Vaping in the washroom. Boys and girls, and hey, everyone in between. The space is safe for those who want the green. Thank you.
Thank you for the update, Stephen. You brought it screaming and yelling into the 2023. All right. And we've got Rachel here is going to share a little poetry from her phone with us. She came unprepared, but she had her phone saved by the technology. Yes.
Everything's on the cloud. Yeah. I can't just climb up this high. No, it's probably not the best practice. Okay. Hello. My name is Rochelle.
Rochelle, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right. So I'm actually going to read some stuff out of my newest poetry book that is still in editing phase. So the first one I chose is called Broken Pendant. What if beauty wasn't broken? Would it be possible to spy love upon an object untouched, living on without the scars of wreckage? A mark in the flower of life is none other than treasure inside a barnacle-covered chest fished from the bottom of the ocean. History of this earthly form preserved on papyrus with ink, corked glass bottle sealed with wax, awaiting the passage of centuries.
Nice.
It's actually about the necklace I'm wearing right here. Whoa. Voila. There's a little mark. You probably can't see it, but there's a little mark that it got stomped on, broken off at a concert, and then we fix it back into place. But I like broken up old things because it shows that they have more history and they've lived a little bit more.
Yes.
Next one I have here is called Play Dead. Were I to tell a tale, nothing would come to life. Let's play dead. Laying on the ground, no preoccupation, just a body. Do you see this image from the eyes, from the side, from the sky? The only way to understand this body is to look all around it. Are there clues in this landscape pointing to this death? If the sun beams down over the mountains to abduct the parting soul? The grass beneath her skin held still despite the breeze. Somehow this image brings peace. If left unperceived by humans, this body will decay. Critters scavenge, fluids leak, dried out bones collected. The essence will be spread, recycled, transformed into shit. It becomes easier to see that everything is connected when there is no life left to give. Okay, cool. The editing is a positive on that one. There's good clapping. Don't need to work on that one anymore. This is fun. I don't really discuss my work as I'm editing, so it's kind of nice. This next one is called Spring Blossoms. Falling in love with the graceful fleet of flowers, every petal that falls is a blessing. Walk along the blanketed surface upon the pavement, a rosy pink walkway to flaunt my style. Today I filled my lungs with flowers. The light fragrance catches my mouth. I gasp and I welcome it. To breathe through my lungs, quick, fleeting experience, yet thorough, full, forever. Every tree is a millionaire. I run my hand through a stream of flowers, one caught on my finger at the end. One of millions, my special petal. Oh, the cherry blossoms of spring, the joy they bring to my heart. Thank you. And the next one I have is called Waves. Waves are what we chip away from our memories, hurried, phenomenal, diminished, crashing upon the rocks as if they ever had a chance at survival. Every wave quickly forms and washes out at once. A terrific punch into oblivion like it never ever was. It reminds me that in consciousness, nothing exists for long. For all things are God, yet it doesn't stay the same. One molecule of a second exists the wave. 1 century of life exists my body, but time isn't what I think in this dream. For I exist forever within these eyes, but there is no map for my life. Drift, drift into passion under ocean's sparkling sun. Night butterfly. People don't change across the world. They integrate. Musical tones waver in a chilly eve, ghosts of notes forgotten, renewed in a constant stream. Laughter of healing pipes out like it was meant to be. Forgo the silent tales of tension, let it arise for as long as necessary. Breathe. Are you hearing your heart or your throat? Do your lungs breathe air or does your soul? This body perceives more than our memories. Every guilt, smile, and struggle locked in. Rejoice! For here arrives a night butterfly, cheering you on, transforming you, and you return to the source of what you are or are not. Matrix.
Matrix.
Okay, somebody said ooh, and then I accidentally clicked on the keyboard and it was the O, and I just wrote ooh, and then it's 3 O's and then a U. That was cool. I don't know if that stays in the final products now when I'm done editing. That's great. I'll read one more. This one's called White Butterfly. Well, it was only a few hours after that night butterfly gave me a hug when a white butterfly flew onto my arm. White didn't take his time to come by, following up like a reflection of the night, if only to complete the rhyme. Night gave me a hug, white appeared in the sun. You don't just transform when you've stored enough energy for it. It just becomes.
Awesome, Rochelle. Thank you so much for sharing those. And yeah, nice to have a live audience to test your edited work. Right? That's what we all wish for. Can we just beam them into the room for a minute to hear this one? Perfect. No problem there. All right, I think we've come to the end of the open micers except for me, so I'm going to pop up and share a couple of poems here. All right. I'll move it up a little bit. Yeah, that might not hurt. Okay. Okay, so I've got, as everybody who was here last month knows, I've been moving and getting settled into the RV and everything, so I've only got one fresh poem to read, but I got one old one I brought along to share. Quintessential moment for anyone from my generation was the night the Beatles hit Ed Sullivan. So I had to write a poem about that. It's kind of like one of those things, you know, where were you when such and such happened? Well, I hope it takes you back there. This is it for me. It's called Birth of the Age of Aquarius. It dropped in 1964, right after Father Knows Best in a commercial for Ivory Snow. As my brother and I lay under the relentless wish slam hiss of my mother's ironing board. Elbows and bellies down on the rec room carpet, we lolled fresh from our Sunday bath in our cowboy pajamas and watched the Ed Sullivan Show on our blizzarding black and white box. I remember the rows of hysterical girls shrieking when Paul's bang shimmied as he hit that high woo, and I want to hold your hand. Ringo smiled what I would come to call his I know you want to fuck me smile, and George looked a little tentative, interior, mysterious, but John was out there. John was the front man. John was dangerous. When they flashed the caption, "Sorry girls, he's married," my 9-year-old mind, immune to the subtlety of commas, wondered how many sorry girls he had wed and left crushed and suicidal in his path. Through the whole performance, my mother's iron only paused to spray a little starch on a collar or realign a misbehaving sleeve. Then I found myself at 9 years old, resenting the perfect crease she had steamed into my corduroy pants. The way my father's pharmacist shirts hung like precast cement waiting for the week ahead. Before bed, my brother and I water-combed our crew cuts forward and prayed for Fender guitars. And all that night we dreamed our most dangerous dreams in sparkling technicolor, while high overhead, Aquarius crowned the constellations. And this is the raw one, unedited. It's called, so far it's Division and Connection, but the title's going to change. So some say you can divide the world into those who tell others what to do and those who don't listen to them. I say this now that our friend is in bed and has finished telling me how our daughter needs tough love and languishes in our compassion. We were at the beach when she brought this up, And my wife and daughter were down at the water's edge waiting in the sun-warmed Georgia Strait, lost in some mother-daughter talk of Melanie Martinez and her latest album my daughter has fallen in love with because it's all about the afterlife and the void you have to pass through before you get to the good stuff. I'm guessing she likes the album because she can relate to that void. When your body is lying lifeless in your deathbed and life is happening somewhere else at the other end of a long tunnel, which pretty much describes a few years of her adolescence, give or take some good days when she forgot to be panicked or sad about herself and the state of the world. They say it's hard for those people who have crossed over and come back to be in the world again. The color is too dull, the body like a claustrophobic closet. And you have to take the people of this planet in small doses so their heavy energy doesn't drain you with its density. When my wife and daughter came up from the water, my daughter was wet from swimming in the incoming tide. She brought our friend a heart-shaped stone she plucked from the sandy bottom, as if she knew our friend might need cheering up. 7 p.m. on Mother's Day, and still no calls from any of her children. Later, as I tiptoe past the open door of the guest room, I see her sleeping, the heart-shaped stone cradled on the night table next to her, aftermath of the day's sun glowing red on her skin. Thank you. All right, and that brings another Electric Mermaid to the close. So thank you all who joined us out there in Zoom land and here live at Char's. Give yourselves a hand. Thank you to Bill Engleson, our feature reader from Denman Island. And yeah, that was an awesome reading, eh? Yeah. And thank you, of course, to all our open micers who shared their souls with us tonight. Lifted our souls and made it a special evening. It was really good to hear such a variety of material from so many talented writers. So I hope you all tune in again next month. We're going to be having our featured reader is Port Alberni's Gwyn Hunt. So that's going to be really awesome. And yeah, good to have Gwyn come here, and hopefully we'll get her to keep coming back afterwards and share some more. So let's have a big round of applause for Char for keeping us happening out there in Zoom land and here as well, and hosting us, and also to Karl for keeping us online. Thank you. And continuing to line up our readers, of course, for the months ahead. And that's about it. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you hopefully.
Thank you, Derek.
Oh, my pleasure as always. Glad to be here. And Sheila, of course, Sheila for keeping us fed and watered here at Char's Landing. Absolutely. God knows where we'd be without you, Sheila. All right. Take good care, everybody. See you again next month. No, I know.